are back. You're listening to You Would Think, the Philadelphia Flyers podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Collington. Joining me, as always, Mr. Kevin Durso. Kevin, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing better after today's Phillies game than I was doing after yesterday's Phillies game, and I'm sure you feel
You're
the same way.
you're doing better after literally the last 10 minutes of it then, because like that is a roller coaster of emotions for sure.
This year's Phillies team, especially in the playoffs so far, has really been, that meme that goes around all the time about I'm so excited for my favorite team to play, and I hate this the whole time. And then great, we won right at the
Yes,
end.
I saw it already online too. So like
Right, and that's the Philadelphia Phillies.
uh,
Except they didn't win yesterday, but like,
I at one point in time I uttered the exact sentence, I hate this team, and then I like paused and went, and I don't even know which team I'm talking about. It kind of was both at the moment.
yeah.
Um
So anyway, speaking of teams that we love to hate, we are going to discuss the Philadelphia Flyers today. We have a bit of a season preview around the rest of the league as well. A bit of a wrap up on training camp, some roster stuff. We're going to dive into that. As we do, follow us on social media at YWT Podcast. Follow Kevin at Kevin_Durso. Lots of Phillies tweets, lots of Flyers tweets, lots of good stuff over there. Okay. Diving right into it, we do have some Flyers news, and I think we should start with the roster
yes, absolutely.
because we are now down to the roster, essentially.
Yeah, and I mean, like, here's what I'll do to kind of get started, because I'll hit really quick the remaining preseason results, if you will, because
Yeah.
really nothing topped last Saturday. Like, we came on, did a show right away after. Hey, did you see the Matvei Michkov game? Like, did you see
That was
the
the
game where he
emotional peak of the preseason for sure.
Sure. Well, and in fairness, the first game of the week on Monday against the Islanders, where they go on the road, was more of a B team. They didn't send Michkov or Jett Luchanko, which was kind of the two interesting young guys on the roster. And then on
Oh,
top
we'll
of it,
talk about Jett Luchanko.
we'll get there. And then on top of it, we're not really sending a bunch of veterans either. Like, this
Right.
is
We're really not. There's not a whole lot of reasons to watch that game, to be honest,
well, like,
unless you're interested in the Phantoms.
well, and like, if I'm being honest, when you looked at like who the top trio was of that team, which I'm going to just by looking at the forwards, I'm drawing a line of like Scott Lawton, Ryan Poehling, Joel Farabee. Maybe was like the top three.
Maybe one player in your top six, and that's
Right.
if depending on line
Right.
combinations.
And then by the way, your top defensive pairing was, technically Rasmus Ristolainen and Igor Zamula are your top pairing for the night, because the rest of it is pretty much guys who are going to get sent to the minors,
mean,
and Eric Johnson.
hot take, and it's not really a hot take. It's been talked about. Rasmus Ristolainen has looked very solid throughout this preseason.
He had a great camp. I thought he had a great camp.
He had a really good camp.
And he scored in that game too, by the way, which is, yeah, and he scored again later too as well, so we'll get into it. But
Yeah,
like,
there are some things that I would love that could happen with the lineup, but yeah, we'll get into that later on the show.
Sure, but
yeah,
but that was kind of the line you saw, and that's why I said I was actually kind of impressed. They only lost the game 4-3 instead of it being like the week before 5-0 to Montreal. That was actually a very fairly competitive game,
still
and
see some fight. Yeah,
and they lost it in the final minute too. Like, that was a game where, actually, surprisingly, so they were down 3-1, I believe, when they made the goalie switch. This was the big deal of this game, was it was the first time anybody got to see Alexei Kolosov in a game. And then he actually looked good for most of that,
yeah.
Pretty much gave up a goal on the last opportunity he saw. Wasn't really on him, because it was a breakdown that kind of let a guy get behind the defense, make a move, and it's not a nobody. It was Kyle Palmieri, so like, actual NHL player who can score.
When that guy has more goals than your whole roster combined,
Pretty
over the course of his career.
Pretty much, exactly.
Yeah.
And so, like, that was actually a nice, like, kind of a nice competitive game, because of the last game of the preseason being what it was, which is you're playing New Jersey's minor league team, basically, because they were already right. They were already preparing to play their regular season opener literally less than 24 hours after you play in the preseason. So they chose not to make that the dress rehearsal game and pushed it to, we're going on the road to Boston. We're pretty much sending.
We're shipping up to Boston, right?
And we're pretty much sending the big club. pretty much sending the full big club, with the exception of maybe a handful of names, right? Like, I think they left one D pair that was, no, they're not going to make it. And 2/3 of a lot. Well, I think ultimately by the end, it was a full line, like the full fourth line that they had that night didn't make it, but you get the point. And they only took 14 shots on goal, and the Bruins had 34 with mostly their primary lineup. And it was not pretty.
And you might see that a lot this year.
Well, to me, it realized all of like the fears that you're going to have with this team, where it's like, if they're not driving play enough like that, then it could get ugly. Like, and you
teams
can chalk
that can control the puck
and you can chalk it up to, we're tired. It's been a lot of skating, things like that. I get it. I'm not saying
back. It's
It wasn't for many of the guys though.
I know
it's part of the equation. So you can chalk it up to stuff like that. I didn't like it from a final audition standpoint. And
I agree.
So it is what it is though. So let's get to the roster, because by the time all this was done, I shouldn't say already, because I think we were kind of, when we did the last show, really talking about in the pretty much the infancy stage, if you will, the Kolosov comes over kind of thing. So it was like he was new to the roster, but they had made a good number of cuts like right before that pretty much got you to the number like that they were at before their last round of cuts this past weekend. Like, it was pretty much right. It was pretty much there. Like, I'm trying to go through to like where their most previous cut mark was. I think it might have been prior to Monday's game or something.
Well, there was that they did cut McIniemi at one point, just kind of solo, and sent him down.
That I think was the day that Kolosov showed up, actually. So that was
something like that.
No, that was, I believe, that was last Sunday, right as we started recording. Actually, we were able to bring that up. So that technically, the day before, when Kolosov showed up and they made more cuts, like right before, it was 37. They were at 36 then, or something of the sort. It was something close, but it was in that range. They had the roster at 36. I guess what also happened and this is where some of the confusion comes in. Their most recent cut was 14 players, but it involved guys who were not on the roster as injuries, or like Denver Barkey never made the roster, but they sent him back to June.
They sent him back, right? So the numbers got a little wonky on that.
So he was never technically officially that, or if he was, they never sent it out that way to say, hey, it's back. He was
never one of the numbers.
Right. To say it was back to 37, because they were realistically sitting at roughly 37, and they made 14 cuts in this in this essentially final round. And this was without actually saying that they were doing anything, or not doing anything, but like, this is without actually saying, here's the final official roster, which comes out technically on Monday.
We haven't announced the official roster, but we've cut everyone down to the exact number needed to be on the official roster.
Exactly. And here were the list of moves. And by the way, throughout the course of the week, you saw some of them coming, because Cal Peterson was on waivers, I think on Thursday, actually.
Okay.
And wasn't playing in the game anyway, so it was already done. And then we got to Friday afternoon, and Friday afternoon they showed that Ula Lixell and Anthony Richard were on waivers, which was pretty much the last two borderline have to go through waivers forwards that were left on the list.
That we all thought were competing for our rosters.
Pretty much. That was it. So then they actually make the official announcement on Friday. Lixell and Richard are on waivers. That's two players. Denver Barkey and Oliver Bonk are going back to London to play in juniors. That's done. And then there was this list of, and this was 14 total players. So I just took two. So there was 10 other players that they listed going to the minors in some way. And I'll start it with some of the more obvious ones. So Cal Peterson, who had been on waivers and cleared, was on that list. And Samu Tuamala was on that list because of he hadn't really played much. He was injured through most of camp. He goes back. And then Cooper Marody, who hadn't played in the preseason. Apparently, he'd been battling a bit of an injury too, so he goes back. Then there was the list of two. Well, Richard was one of these, so he's on waivers. Two others who were also signed in the offseason that were supposed to kind of compete. Rodrigo Abels and Oscar Eklund. They're on the list. Then you go to the defensemen, and you'll start with the obvious ones, Helge Grans and Hunter McDonald. They're okay. They're not ready. Adam Ginning is on that list, and he was waiver exempt, so it was an easy cut. Like, you can easily move him back to the minors. But there was an expression earlier.
Yeah.
Well, there was an expression earlier in the week of some disappointment from John Tortorella of he didn't have a great camp, so that's why this is probably happening. And Emil Andre had a really good camp, but was kind of victimized by the numbers game of, well, you're still like the eighth guy, so you might be the first call up, and first call up is going to be very have various translations, because he's the first call up if you're looking for a puck moving defenseman, but it might be Ginning or McDonald if it's I need a big body and a guy who hits people and is physical. Like, what did you see in that last preseason game? Hunter McDonald goes and fights a guy. Like, and I think we kind of
you could definitely see that he was looking. He knew that he got off to a bit of a hot start in the preseason, and I think he realized that it was starting to slip on him a little bit. So I think that fight is him going, "Hey, I'm here."
Well, we kind of thought he was looked like, and when I say we, I mean like people like myself, conversation in the press box, things like that. Kind of figured at some point he might be looking for a fight, because that's kind of a show of I'm willing to step in and do something and be tough and things like it's no different, in that game. By this point, this is a guy who was already sent down and was not going to be part of the roster. Really wasn't even, like, kind of turned heads a little bit in rookie camp, because like you heard his name a lot, but then after that it was like you weren't going to hear much of him in main camp. But Sawyer Bolton had 2 fights in the game and didn't do so great in the first one, so picked the second one with the same guy, who wasn't expecting it, right, to try to get on the right side of it and things like that. But it leaves you by the end of the game remembering something that he did. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like, there's an impression.
It's all about making an impression.
It's not going to make the same impression as Sean Couturier stepping in for your prized prospect, but it's going to. But it is something that indicates I'm willing to do this, and if that's what's going to make me noticeable, I'm going to try. Sure. So, we'll see. And then Kolosov got sent down as well. And now, for what it's worth, by the way, and I actually want to talk about this later as we kind of break down more of the roster, like when we start to list some of the stuff, because Kolosov had, again, you don't really take too much away. Like, and John Tortorella kind of said this, there's not much to take away from that last preseason game. But Kolosov didn't look bad in either game. And then, honestly, the area where he really needs to excel, he went and they've played preseason games in the AHL. He played one the other day. I think it was on Saturday night, actually. And Kolosov allowed only 2 goals in a 4-2 win. And I think the numbers were very lined up with like what you want to see. I think it was something like maybe 30 or 32 or something like that. And it's like, okay, that's a good, whatever. I'm going to look it up really quick just to make sure I'm right, because I don't. Go ahead.
Kolosov's enough of a guy that I'm willing to keep an eye on him. And if his numbers are good in Lehigh Valley this year, and one of your NHL goaltenders either goes down with an injury or isn't pulling their weight, I'm willing to pull him up and give him a shot. Like, I think if he, continues to play well, obviously, and with the talent level Kolosov is, he should eventually, maybe not right away because he is so young, but he should eventually dominate the AHL level.
Sure.
And if he comes in and does that right away, I'm willing to give him a look pretty quickly.
Okay, so for what it's worth, so it was 20 of 22, which is not nearly as good of a save percentage, but apparently stopped a one-timer at 6-on-5 late with, and you're playing Hershey, by the way, who is no slouch of a team, obviously. They've been very successful in the AHL over the last several years. Apparently, so made a big save on a one-timer late at 6-on-5, stopped 3 breakaways, also had to go into the splits for a save at the end of the second period, and played the full game. So, he's a very athletic guy. He's definitely got the athleticism, and So I'm just curious, like, to me, what the big question is that if like one of these, obviously, first of all, if one of these guys gets hurt at the NHL level, but also if like I go back and the only other game that Sam Ersson played was the Boston game that I talked about where they got outshot badly. Well, they only lost that game. Well, they lost that game 4-1 in the end, but they really, with a goalie, and they only lost it 2-1. And he had another one of those types of games where, again, it's like, oh, and there's the 30 for 32 thing again. So he had a 37 save shutout and was 30 of 32 in the other game. Like, yeah,
I'm glad I drafted Sam Ersson in fantasy.
That probably locks you into the number one spot if you didn't already have it, which he pretty well did, obviously, but that really locks you in. Ivan Fedotov, I don't know yet. Like, gave you start
question mark,
but sometimes gave you a start that you're like I think he was the guy who was in goal for the whole game against Boston at home that they win in overtime. And we talked about this last week. You win a game 3-2, and he gives up 2 goals on whatever number of shots he faced. I think it was like 24.
When you're back up, you can't expect anything else.
Right. Like, that was a perfect backup performance. You had a shot to win the game. You did ultimately, and he didn't really allow too much. If he does that, that's fine. If he has some rough goes of it, we'll wait and see. You know what I mean? Like, he really like it was unfair to judge him in the last preseason game too. He really didn't get any action. Like, I think he exited what? I think he made 7 saves on 8 shots in the first half of the game, and then
he didn't get a whole lot of help either.
Right, no, and then Kolosov got peppered later on. He really took ended up facing a lot of shots, and they ultimately scored 3 more times on him. But either way, so we've highlighted the goalies on the roster already. It's Ersson and Fedotov, obviously. And the 7 defensemen that make it are exactly the 7 I talked about last time we did a show. Like, it's if we're doing it in number order: Zamula, Sanheim, York, Drysdale, Sealer, Risto, and Johnson.
Pretty much your exact core from last year. Sub Walker for Johnson.
Yeah, Johnson's around for the whole year. He's now. Did you catch the interview, by the way? He played, and he didn't have to, obviously, but he played in the preseason finale against New Jersey, where nobody else
he says he didn't have to play, but I think he did.
No,
I think he knows that his spot in the lineup is probably the most questionable at the moment.
Well, it's not that it's the most questionable. He basically, because let's put it this way. John Tortorella and Danny Briere pretty much already had the talk with him that they kind of had with Mark Stahl last year, where it's like, it's not going to be, it's not going to be every game. And you know this, but he goes out, and in that game, because they scored 5 goals in the game as a team, he ended up with I think a multi-point game somewhere in there. One of his points came in on a power play goal or whatever. So after the game, he turns and goes, I hope Torts and Danny are watching, because that's another power play point for me. Might have to take some of Michkov's ice time, play on the top unit. And I'm really pushing for it or whatever. And he chuckled afterwards or whatever. Like, he's got
he's a funny guy.
He's got a great personality, and he's a great guy. Like, fits in with this room perfectly. Like,
and that's exactly what you need, right? Like, you get rid of Mark Stahl, you get rid of Cam Atkinson. You've traded Claude Giroux in the last 2 or 3 years. You may be worried about some of that. Right. You may be worried about some of that kind of top end veteran, and by top end, I mean top end of the age curve, veteran leadership. And Johnson really can provide that in spades for this team.
They've got a bunch of guys on the back end, I think, that have leadership qualities about them that's going to work. And I'm not talking about some of
Jamie Drysdale will wear a letter for this team at some point.
I don't know, honestly. And I'm not saying that doesn't mean he's obviously not a terrible dude. I don't feel that way at all. He fits in really nicely too. He's not even the guy that jumps out to me. Maybe
it Cam York?
Well, Cam York was the captain of a U.S. World Junior Championship team.
You can see it in the way he skates. You can see it in the way he carries himself on the ice.
That's one of the reasons why I buy into him. Nick Sealer's a great room guy. We know this already. But I want to add, and now that you're getting a full year of Erik Johnson, you see it with Erik Johnson. But I want to add in another guy who I think has got great personality and is playing a bigger leadership role than most people realize.
You're about to tell me it's Rasmus Ristolainen, aren't you?
No.
Really? Okay.
I'm going to tell you it's Igor Zamula.
Okay. Okay.
Because first of all, he may be the most important player on your team.
Because he's your Michkov translator,
He's
your Michkov link.
he's Mishkov's best friend at the moment. They don't go anywhere like without each other.
Because his agent said, "Hey kid, if you're smart."
Well, he had a great interview, and it was actually like the biggest takeaway from the interview. Like when we talked to Zamula, like right at the start of training camp, it was in the last episode that the Flyers put out of the Standard, their little training
Yeah.
camp video series,
Oh, it's
where
so
he goes,
good.
where and this is the kind of interview that Zamula can be, where he talks about not knowing much English in the first place, or there's not a lot of show up. There's not a lot of Russian speaking players. And he's talking about, by the way, when he played juniors in Canada. Not even like, hey, when I came
Oh,
here.
yeah, he
It's
talks about showing up and crying because he was so lonely, and yeah, absolutely, it was a heartbreaking interview.
but you push. But he talks about like when you don't have anybody. He said something along the lines of you go home, you end up talking to the wall or a chair or something like that. And he's saying it, and we're all kind of laughing about it because he's saying it in such a way like he's kind of semi making a joke
It's
or
making
whatever.
light of it, for sure.
He's making light of something that was clearly hard for him at one point in time, and now he's able to be helpful
I
in that
hope
way and things like that.
I I hope one day Alexei Kolosov speaks of his situation with a similar light.
Eventually.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
listen,
at some point.
all he can do at this point, Kolosov, I mean, is try to turn over a new leaf here and make the best of everything now. Like, if you're gonna nobody's really talked to him yet. Like on my side of the equation is what I mean. Like he hasn't
From the
done a
media.
media avail, things he hasn't done a media avail. So, and I'm not saying that means he has to, by the way. It's more of there was a statement put out that like he expressed how he was happy to be here and looking forward to working with the team, all stuff like that. So you just got to show it now. Like show that you want to be here, and let's not be talking about this in 6 weeks if you're not up here, about whatever. Like, isn't it obvious that he's already going to probably get the bulk of the starting time in the AHL anyway? Like
Yeah.
he's better than the other two guys.
Yeah, of course, and as long as his play doesn't betray him, then I expect him to be the Phantom's primary star, for sure.
Sure. And then you go from there. I'm going to write about this later in the week, but I think that that's the most fascinating position going into the season because you've got a guy that you're trying to figure out what he is at the NHL level, a guy you're trying to figure out what he is at the AHL level. You've got a kid in juniors who goes back after having, in my eyes, an outstanding camp.
Oh, yeah.
Was great. And then you've got this like little known, almost like footnote at this point, who is playing for the same KHL team that Michkov played for last year. That is not very good, by the way, on paper.
Do you know, is the pronunciation Zavragan?
I think it's Zevragan, if that's
Zavragan?
yeah.
Well, regardless, if you know who that is, if not, look up his Elite Prospects page. That kid is stupid. He's so good.
Well, because it seems that way. I'm going to find, I think, usually
His
hockey news
it's,
hub's usually good for the KHL stuff. So I think it was
uh,
there was some stuff listed there about him.
Appleyard too had it, I think.
Yeah, I think so. But just early, and I mean, this is the day we're recording this show.
Sunday morning,
He made
basically.
41 saves on 43 shots and another win.
His team wins 3-2. His team was outshot 43-13 in that game, and they
They
won
won.
3-2.
But
Hello. Remember how we talked about the Flyers getting outshot by the Boston Bruins?
I
Okay,
actually,
just checking.
I actually am gonna look up. Yeah, okay, because here it is again. Because this is where Appleyard had this even better. So he's played 6 KHL games this year, and he's 3-3, and like the record is what it is because he's playing for like a not great team in the KHL. Has a and I don't know, is this part good? He's got a 941 save percentage this season. Is that bad?
I think they just checked, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. I mean, they're saying like even in the game that he played today, that's a 954 save percentage. Like
He's really good. He like if And again, we're talking about a young prospect goalie playing in a league of men.
Right.
For a
And
team that's not really one of the top tier teams in a league that is very top heavy. Um,
yeah,
and he's doing some silly stuff.
oh, by the way, have I mentioned the most important detail about him yet? He's 19.
It's pretty good. It's
Right.
pretty
Like,
good.
how many times have we talked about, oh, when does a goalie usually start to come to the, when does a goalie finally get to the point where he's like, good or whatever, you know what I mean? Like
Right.
ready to go. Oh, he might be 24, 25 by the time he's ready to go. This kid's 19 and he's actually like dominating the KHL. If he maintains it, they're right. He's going to be like the best goalie prospect. Like, it's not wrong to say this in like to put this sentence together because I've seen other people do it. These are Shesterkin numbers.
I have seen that as well. I have seen that comparison. His KHL numbers have looked Shesterkin-ish.
Right. And
And
it's
that is
early.
very and Shesterkin didn't come over until he was, I think, 24 or 25,
Sure.
correct?
And well, and neither did Sorokin. And like there's other guys who
A
don't come
bunch of
over
these
right
Russian
away.
guys. Yep.
But that's why I'm saying it's fascinating. You just somehow or other you are still finding things out about the 2015 draft class because Ivan Fedotov and who's qualified as a rookie this year because he didn't play enough.
Yeah. Is he not too old? Is he not older than the rookie threshold? Like,
I
isn't there a
mean, it not by
like I don't think he can win the Calder.
no, I wouldn't go that far.
But
And
you know who could win the Calder? Because there is one other roster member that we have
well,
not talked about.
Matvei Michkov could, but that's not who
Well, Matvei Michkov will. Spoiler alert. But another person who could this year is Jett Luchanko, because Jett Luchanko, by all appearances at this point, has made the Philadelphia
yeah.
Flyers out of camp, at least for now.
Now
Asterisk.
pump the brakes on the Calder talk because
Of course.
it could be a
It was
9-game tryout.
mostly it was mostly a transition, let's be honest.
No, I know, but it could be just a 9-game tryout. He seems like he's earned that much according to everybody else involved, who makes the decisions.
I think he has earned at minimum that much. Yeah. And
Now,
I've been calling for it on this show for at least 2 shows now.
I'm a little more hesitant because I just don't like. I'm not taking away from his maturity, and I'm not taking away from he does little things. I didn't see enough, in my opinion, to say that he should stay. Like he didn't bang the door down theoretically.
But Kevin, how many centers do the Philadelphia Flyers have?
Well, there you go. And that's what I wrote about the day after this decision was made is this is more about like, and indirectly, as much as John Tortorella tried to say, it's not everything. It was a big reason why they kept
that for sure.
because you feel comfortable with him. What you tried or what you're admitting by keeping him on the team is I can't think of more than 2 centers on the team that I feel like are better than him.
What?
That's what you're actually admitting. You're sitting here saying Sean Couturier, Morgan Frost, and then
but here's the other thing about that is the nature of the contract slide and the junior eligibility and all that stuff. It means that's not necessarily the case, right? Like Ola Lexel could be on this team in 3 weeks after 9 of these games, and Luchanko gets sent back, and we do a little roster shuffling and move some things around.
Sure.
But I think because of the nature of the contract situation, once he goes back to Guelph, he cannot return.
Correct.
I think it's worth at least taking a look at him if you think there is any chance at all that he has the potential to stick.
And I'm not going to go to the extreme here. Like, I don't think this ruins him or anything like that because here's the other part of that equation.
No, it definitely doesn't ruin him. No.
Well, no, but here's the part of the equation with it too is like, listen, if it does ruin him, then how mature?
He's mentally fragile anyway.
No, but then how mature is he? Like you're touting, oh, he's such a mature kid. He's built like his mindset is like a 35-year-old, even though he's 19, he's 8, he just turned 18. You know what I mean? Like, okay, then if he's as mature as you say he is, then if this doesn't work out effective immediately and another year in juniors is better, then you should be able to handle it and jump right in and do everything you're supposed to. He should
jump right in and have 100 points in 35 games with Guelph.
Well, I mean, within reason.
I don't think that's insane, frankly.
Well, no. I was saying within reason because this is not the best CHL
That's fair.
team either. Like it's
Well, he'll get traded to London. It's fine.
if that would be,
Um,
I think they would love that.
oh, if Barkey and Luchanko end up captaining or like leading a London squad, oh man, I might have
And the
to get a subscription.
same power play, maybe. I mean, they
And
won't
listen,
because Barkey's playing
I
some center too, so they might have to change that up.
I have already talked to my wife. We are looking at going to an Erie Otters game at some point this year because we're only
Ooh,
about 2 hours out. And
I like that.
when London's in town, when London's in town. Okay. Anyway,
You sure you're not going to
um,
throw Guelph in there now too?
I
Like
mean, listen, hey,
if
the
he
Guelph
happens to be
Storm if the Guelph Storm would like to send tickets, we are at YWT podcast on
there.
Twitter. The DMs are open. Feel free. I would love. They don't even have to be good seats. Press passes, whatever you want to do. Anyway, so regardless, Jett Luchanko, hopefully, as a Flyers fan, hopefully he just slots right in, looks decent, stays on the team,
Sure.
and is your third line center, right? A
And
la Scott or Sean Couturier in 2011,
right. Now
2012.
listen, here's kind of where I'm at with this too is like first of all, good for the kid. Like
Absolutely.
you faced a challenge and you
He
did it
earned every second
right.
of it.
You did enough in the coaching staff, in the eyes of the coaching staff and presumably in management, at least to warrant the tryout period.
Absolutely.
I just wonder, like I said, first of all, it's clear desperation on you don't have many centermen on the roster, and
Ding.
like it's clearly kind of a desperate situation to have to do this. Like he just turned 18. He was the youngest player drafted, I believe. Like
Well, and I wonder if that's one of the reasons that they're willing to give him a shot because look at what everybody thought about him when the season ended, right? When we had here's all the established tape we have on him. Here is what people think. Experts had him in the 30s, 40s in draft rankings.
Mhm.
Flyers take him a little early. He shows up and looks incredible and looks like he has taken large physical strides in the last 4 months or whatever since he's played hockey. So what if you just keep, like you have to project some amount of that to continue at least a little bit, as he gets comfortable.
Sure. And like, listen, he impressed me enough in this preseason and training camp and all stuff like that. He impressed me enough to sit there and say that, like, look, I don't know that he did enough to bang the door down and make the team at 18. He did do enough that I would strongly consider he was penciled in for next season. Like,
Yeah, I agree, and I think this reinforces that. Frankly, even if it is a
well,
9 game tryout, like
well,
I
no,
think you,
see,
yeah,
now it better be because
yeah.
you wouldn't even let him make the team this year if it was just, well, we pencil him in next year. Like now
No,
he's
it
got to
did
be
pen, yeah,
right. He's got to be penciled in at least. And it's like he almost would go into next camp no matter how it goes, kind of needing you better fall flat on your face for us to send you back to juniors for another year.
probably, yeah.
Like, and listen, like there's an element of this, and I've seen people complain about this online a little bit, that this is where this rule kind of sucks. Like that there is no in between, because sure, there's a way where I could probably justify put him in the AHL then. Why not? Like he's probably better than a junior age player, but he's maybe not good enough for the NHL just yet, but they don't have that option. He's either got to stick or he goes back to juniors, and that sucks.
So there's some talk about, and there's a lawsuit, and I think it's happening about CHL players being able to go to college,
Yeah.
and
And there's been a couple of
Is
examples.
that the path? Then go to college for a year, playing college hockey for a year. That's not the CHL, but it's a little bit closer, and you can kind of leave college whenever you want, really.
Well, by signing, yes.
Right? Like, is that the play?
I
Obviously,
wonder.
for guys who haven't signed the ELC yet, so there's
Sure.
certain people it won't apply to.
And
But
like it justifies, like everything else about him, it justifies everything. Like he didn't leave development camp without an ELC, so that they already knew that was taken care of.
yep,
Then he gets here, and it's like, okay, they said like I'll admit I was a little surprised. He had a good rookie weekend, like definitely looked the
and
part.
first week, including that rookie camp, he did kind of bang the door down a little bit. Obviously, I
Um,
know it slowed down a little bit towards the back half of camp, but that first week, including that rookie, that dev camp, he looked really, really great.
Like, you know what? Okay, you know what's interesting for me about him kind of is every other game he looked better than like somewhat the previous one. Like, what I mean is I thought he had a really good first game, like the game where everybody's eyes are on, oh, Mishkov's playing it. The first time anybody sees him in a game, he had a really good game. Like Luchanko had a really good game. Then the next night, I kind of felt like there were parts of that game where nobody had a great game. It was kind of dull and boring, and it didn't really have the juice that like it needed to. And then he sets up the game winner in overtime, and it's like there's the one moment, but okay. Then his first preseason game, he has 2 assists and he makes a bunch of nice little subtle plays, and it's like, look at him, he looked great. And and I totally justify, like, you said games coming in, and now look, he played his first game and he's earned another game somewhere.
At least one. Yeah.
Right. So, okay, he's definitely going to earn another one. And I didn't think he had a great game against the Islanders at home. Then he played Boston at home, and I thought he did have a really decent game for no points. Like, at least modestly noticeable, made a few plays, could have had points. Totally get it. And then the last game you got from him was the preseason finale, like not preseason finale, but the dress rehearsal game, as I call it. And kind of nobody looked good. I mean, Michkov had like those handful of moments, which is encouraging, by the way. Like, what that means is that Michkov can have a handful of moments, even in like the lousiest game, where there are some games where it's like, this game was terrible, and I don't remember anything special about anybody. Even Michkov had like something
Prefer the tape games. Yeah.
Right, but even Michkov had something out of that game where you go, well, that was still nice. Like, that's still something I can take away from like watching this. And then they didn't play against Jersey, obviously. So it's like, this is what you're left with. So maybe that's where you leave things, is see what happens. I think the one thing that they go into is like, because it's really funny. It was like one of these things where it was like, don't read into this, don't read into this, don't read into this from the beginning, because it was, oh, look at the number they gave him in training camp. He's wearing number 17. What's that? You know, that's not a
real number.
Right. That's not a go back to juniors number. That's maybe he's got a shot number.
Yep.
And everybody, like, we all pumped the brakes, like, no. They just,
no, this is a guy, right?
This isn't that thing or whatever. And then he starts skating with like, oh, you can play with Joel Farabee and Bobby Brink.
He's playing with like real players on his line. That's
making things happen with the real players on his line. And it's like, okay, maybe there's something here to this too.
And as of right now on Daily Faceoff, by the way, they have him penciled in as the third line center between
Joel Farabee and
Bobby Brink.
Sure.
Which, by the way, yes, please.
Well, and by the way, you know, I know the preseason started, and this has nothing to do with Luchanko per se, but I know it started with Matvei Michkov, with Owen Tippett and Morgan Frost. But I think now, and I'm not looking at Daily Faceoff, but I'm going to take a guess that he's on a line with Sean Couturier and Travis Konechny instead.
So Daily Faceoff still has him on the second with Frost and Tippett.
I think that's going to change.
I did see Michkov on the left, Couturier in the middle, Konechny on the right. And to be honest, that's kind of going out the window a little bit in hockey anyway. It's really at the point now where you have your center and then the other 2 forwards in a lot of systems.
Right.
So it's a little less important.
Interchangeable, exactly.
Especially, frankly, when the talent level is that high.
But there was a little tiny hint that John Tortorella dropped about how he thinks that Michkov and Konechny have some chemistry forming, and I think that means he's starting on that line.
Then it's real exciting, by the way, because
by the way, that means that your other line is Tippett, Frost, Forster,
which is that's phenomenal. And Morgan Frost is going to end the season with 75 assists.
I mean, maybe between power play and something, who knows?
Legitimately.
I mean, they've got to finish, but yeah,
that is true. Okay, so. But I think we should.
So Luchanko makes it. Lixell does not. Richard does not, and that's really the battle you have to talk about. I mean, everybody else who makes the roster, if I just read down the forwards really quick, you know what to
last year's team.
Yeah, you know, Brink, Cates, Couturier, Delorier, Farabee, Forster, Frost, Hathaway, Konechny, Lawton, the 2 rookies back to back, Luchanko and Michkov, Paling, Tippett.
Is Noah Cates a healthy scratch on opening night? You think?
Quite possibly. Yeah. I
so.
mean, based on they ran, and this is where some of this comes from. They ran lines that kind of indicate that, like I said, it would be, and maybe there's something changes with it. Like Michkov may not play with the I'll call it the Konechny line because, like, who knows? There could be some mix and match in there. I think they really like, again, I think they really like that Farabee, Luchanko, Brink line. I think they really like that group. And then you know that the fourth line is going to feature some combination of Lawton, Cates, Delorier, Hathaway, Paley,
Right. Yep.
like the other five. And I mean, listen, it sounds like a nice fourth line if you're playing. What did we just come up with then? If you're playing Hathaway on the right side and Lawton on the left, and put either Cates or Paling in the middle, probably Paling.
It's not too bad.
You know what I mean? But so Lawton,
Yep.
Paling, Hathaway as your fourth, not bad.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
That's not too bad.
Like it's going to be interesting. And I just
Yeah.
again, this comes down to Luchanko holding his own. He's definitely got a business-like approach about it, and we shall see. Like,
And he and Matvei Michkov will make their rookie laps in Vancouver on Friday night.
yeah, and
all
then
right,
and then presumably be introduced as part of the home opener ceremonies on the
absolutely.
following Saturday.
Yep.
Sounds also against Vancouver, ironically. I don't know
That
why
is-
they love putting the Vancouver matchups in October,
Get
but
it out of the way. All right, so
they
I
do.
think we should get into our NHL season previews, but I think we should start with the Flyers kind of specifically.
Yeah,
And
I'll still pull this up, but yes, go ahead.
yeah. So the Flyers.
I feel like this is the part where you come in with the hard-hitting questions that you want me to answer.
Yeah, I want a couple things from you here.
Sure. Okay.
Yes, no.
Okay.
Does Matvei Michkov win the Calder?
Yes.
I'm putting you right on the spot. First question.
No, but I'll go there
Yeah.
because, you want to know what's funny? I'm not trying to make this take too long, but
Yeah.
I looked up because nobody's ever won the Calder in Flyers history.
Okay.
Not even the guy whose name we've put in the same sentence as Michkov for the last however many months since we been talking about it. You know why, by the way? Because when Eric Lindros was 19 and debuted, he debuted in like the totally wrong year to debut because there was some other kid. And I'm actually going to turn the camera.
Was it Yager?
No, I'm going to turn the camera because there's
Okay.
a picture on the wall now behind me from that season. I'm going to try to point this picture.
Okay, who is that?
That is Teemu Solani.
Setting
the rookie scoring record.
Did he have a good year?
He just happened to be a rookie the same year as Eric Lindros.
Did he score more goals than Austin Matthews scored last year?
Yeah.
Crazy.
So it's
okay.
The last time we've had this conversation with Shane Gostisbehere. And Shane Gostisbehere did not win the Calder that year, finished second to I don't know. You want to remind me who he finished second to? Because didn't he play in the same league as Michkov before coming over here?
Was it Panarin? Was
that
the Panarin year?
Yeah. Okay. So that's why I'm saying. So like, I mean, let's be real. If not for an injury against the Flyers, no less, it was the McDavid.
It would have been Panarin. Yeah.
And it would have been him. But
good old Brandon Manning. Okay, so next question, and this is a doozy here, and we'll get into our previews, and this will become a little more relevant. But
sure,
do the 2024-2025 Philadelphia Flyers make the Stanley Cup playoffs?
No, I'm gonna say no. No, I said that on a preview. I kind of spoiler alert. This was on a previous show. I said this before we ever actually had before you actually pitched the question to me. In that sense, I don't have them making it, and my only clarification will be, and I'll go back to exactly what I said before.
You're wrong, but continue.
Well, no, there's a way I see it happening. There's a very specific way I see it happening, and that's if this power play is middle of the pack because Michkov is that good for a power play. And I'll even add in on this. If Luchanko turns out to be as good as he could be, and I really makes the most of this 9 games and stays and doesn't hit a wall in the same way that you expect so many rookies to do. If he has a decent year, here's your 3 ifs for you. If the power play is better, if the rookies make the team better than we think, and if your goaltending plays above their heads again.
Fedotov can play 30 or 35 games, I think, is the real question. And not be embarrassing.
It's not even that for me, because that's why I said that's why I'm going back to it's the most fascinating position for me, because if center is the weakness,
Yep.
We have to keep Luchanko for at least 9 games to see if he sticks, because I can't think of another center.
We could use a center real bad.
Right, like, because he's a center and he's fast, right? That's literally the criteria of keeping Luchanko right now, was he's a center and he's fast, so we're keeping him. That's I don't know for sure and certain. That may have been John Tortorella's words with a few other things scattered in there, because that's how John Tortorella is to Danny Briere. He's a center and he's fast. Right. He's a center and he's fast. I want him on the roster. Could have been that way, right? And maybe that works, maybe it doesn't. I'm questioning the same, or wondering the same thing about the goalies. You're going to say, oh, if Ivan Fedotov plays like 30 games and actually looks good. I'm going to say, if anybody comes up and looks good.
If you can get 30 or 35 games out of your backup goaltender.
Maybe it's like,
regardless. If Sam Ersson doesn't have to play 28 out of 30 down the stretch,
sure,
is what I'm looking for.
Maybe it's Kolosov.
That's fine. Absolutely fine.
Maybe we're there in December. I don't know yet. But for the time being, we will wait and see. I mean, because let's put it this way. I don't think anything's going to take away from him wanting to be eventually at the NHL level. And so if he's there, I think he'd want to play there. Like, I don't think the KHL conversation comes back into play if he's getting NHL time.
One more question.
Okay.
And then we'll get into NHL previews here.
Okay.
Does Michkov eclipse 90 points?
Ooh, I'm not feeling that as much.
Okay.
I told you 60 is a nice, like 60 is a nice number. I feel like to be like the baseline, like, hey, I think 60 is a realistic possibility. I think that if he doesn't hit a wall as hard, 75 is on the table.
Okay.
And I just want to, like, I'm trying to think in the back of my mind too, because you asked me about the Calder discussion. What other rookies are out there? And I know there's a handful, and I know there's one very obvious one that everybody's going to think of as soon as, like, right off the top of your heads. And no, that's not who I'm thinking of. Everybody, no. What matchup have you had circled on the calendar since the schedule came out?
Oh, Potter's not winning it. Let's be honest.
And I wouldn't expect it either. I like, to me, I mean, Celebrini's probably, like, I think on most of the betting books, Celebrini's number 2 behind Michkov. And then I think 3 is usually Stankoven.
Stankoven is a really solid piece.
You know why I wonder about him? Because he just plays for a team where rookies are really freaking good. Like,
well, and he's got playoff experience already.
Right. Like, he's
got 25 games or whatever it is.
Showed up, played in the playoffs, and Dallas just churns them out like it's nothing. So,
and puts them in a position to succeed.
Right.
Okay, let's dive into some NHL predictions here.
Okay.
I think you and I are going to look at things drastically differently, and I can.
We might. Let's see.
Let's start in the Metro. That is where the Flyers are. That is the team we were just talking about.
Okay.
I'm gonna get your playoff teams from the Metropolitan Division for the 24-25 season.
Okay. And this is in order, by the way. So I just put everything, like, my top. I'll list them in order.
Division winner?
New York Rangers.
Okay. I think that is fair. I think that makes a lot of sense. I have the same thing.
Okay.
Okay. Do you have the same second team as well?
My second team is the Carolina Hurricanes.
Rod the bod, baby. Okay, 2 for 2. We are matched through the first 2 teams of the Metro.
Speaking of Rod, by the way, did you see they just signed his son to a 2-way contract the other day? So there's another bit more in the organization.
From a dorky sim league fantasy hockey perspective, I've had my eye on Skylar Brindamore for about 2.5 years now.
He's a
really good player. He's a really good little center. He tore it up at the college level.
Right.
Okay. So who is your third team in the Metropolitan Division?
The New Jersey Devils. And I feel really good about that after this weekend. I know it was Buffalo, but I also feel really good about it after this weekend.
I'm going to agree with you, and I'm going to put them there too. I have bandied back and forth with. Listen, here's the thing.
Yeah.
Full disclosure. I'm going to look right in the camera. I'm going to stare down the barrel of the camera as I say this. The Devils are frauds. They're not a good team. They're not. They're not a good team. They beat the Sabres twice. Stop it. They're not a good team. I'm glad they posted their little O2 meme. That was very funny. I think they're going to make the playoffs because, quite frankly, I don't think the Flyers are very good either. But who else in the division is doing it? Let's be real. Just
So,
skimming through the rest of the division here.
so hold on a minute. Jacob Markstrom making a save of the year candidate in 18 minutes into the regular season doesn't change your thoughts, because that was like the one weakness that they had, is like they've got a good defense, and within reason, like Luke Hughes is out for a little while, and I'll be
They have
honest.
to stay healthy, which is something this team has struggled
Well, I
with
was
over the
about to
last
say, I'll
couple
be
of
honest.
years.
I fully expect Jack Hughes to miss time at some point this year. I don't know how long, but I do expect it to happen. Like, that there will be the occasional, for a couple games, he's day to day. You know what I mean? Like, because it happens pretty regularly. I'm not saying that like I don't expect it. And it's why I won't go so far as to suddenly go, oh, hey, you got a goaltender, you're winning the division. I'm not going that far.
I will also say Markstrom played a ton from 2017 to 2023. Last year he played about 10 fewer games in Calgary, and maybe that's just because they were bad and they were resting him because they could and blah blah blah. But he has played a ton, and he's got a ton of hard miles on him. It just makes me nervous. Listen, I'm just gonna say it. The
That's
Devil's a
fine. No,
fraud.
the devil's in goaltending, for the last several years. It's been rough. Unless you do what they did in preseason and roll out Marty Brodeur's kid to win a game for you. Like,
Hilarious.
we're getting to that territory. Did
Do
that make you feel old, by the way?
yeah. Um, do you have a fourth metropolitan team making the playoffs this year?
I do not.
Okay, I do, and it's the Philadelphia Flyers.
Okay.
Because again, look at the rest of the division. I understand why Columbus isn't going to be relevant this year. There's numerous reasons. We don't need to get into that. They're going to finish last in the division, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
The Washington Capitals suck. Pittsburgh Penguins suck. The New York Islanders suck. There's a lot of free points in this division this year. And I know they're not free, right? They're still going to be tough games, and it's the NHL, and every game is a 1-goal game. And I'm not saying they're free wins. And like I just mentioned a minute ago, don't think the Flyers are a very good team either. So I don't necessarily think they're going to come in and just mop these teams.
Are
But I
you
think
basically putting the Flyers in the Washington spot last year and saying, like, hey, you're
exactly
the last
spot
man?
the spot that the Flyers should have held until the last minute, because
Yeah.
I think this team looks very similar to last year's team. You trade Carter Hart and Sean Walker for, I mean, Eric Johnson, but like as far as your roster goes, Matvei Michkov and Ivan Fedotov.
Well, here's
You lose a little bit on the goaltending, but you gain quite a bit on your forward core.
well,
And
because
I
quite
think that's enough
frankly,
to push you forward, as
well,
well as all your young players
and
getting better.
that's why I said, like, to me, the way they make the playoffs is, like, first of all, your special teams needs to be better, power play primarily, but
And Mishkov will make it better.
no,
That
I
is
know.
part of something that has
That's
to
where I
be
was gonna
addressed.
go with it, is that, like,
Yep.
really, if we're being honest here, I can name 3 players as the reasons why they would make the playoffs if you get from them what you think you're capable of. Because to me, they're like the new additions, and one of
Yep.
them is not Jett Luchanko in this case.
No,
It's
I agree.
it's
And I made this assumption, by the way, with Luchenko going down after 9.
That's fair.
I don't have him on your roster for 82.
The 3 players that I have that mean the most to the Flyers in terms of making the playoffs are Matvei Michkov and what he does to get, offense going, power play going, creativity, all that. Number 2 is Ivan Fedotov.
Oh,
Because
okay, fair enough.
if you have a legitimate backup like you didn't have at the end of the season last year, what did they need? They technically missed the playoffs by 4 points, but what is it? Another win or 2, and like, which I get it. And when I say win or
Al
2,
Peterson could stop a beach ball.
but and I'm saying another win or 2, and people can assume that means, oh, so 4 more points, like you said, they missed by. No, I'm talking about win a game in overtime.
Yep.
They lost to the Islanders in overtime. You win a game in overtime like that, or lost to the Rangers late in overtime. You win a game like that, that might be the point that gets you in. So Ivan Fedotov being a good backup. And number 3, I think this is one you were actually waiting for me with. Number 2 is Jamie Drysdale.
Listen, I was talking about Sean Couturier because I think he's a huge part of this team this year. But no, Jamie Drysdale is absolutely enormous as well.
But so the reason why I didn't say Couturier is because, to me, you can get, I honestly think you could get parts of the Couturier you had last year, and it's not gonna, it's not gonna make a huge difference. To me, it's not the catalyst. Michkov is such a catalyst of the offense because you're supposedly injecting so much creativity into the picture. Drysdale being healthy and mobile and able to do things to the level that you think he's capable of could be a difference maker on the blue line. And then
He's healthy.
That's
real.
having the additional goaltender that you feel like you can actually. John Tortorella said it, and then that's because I cut myself off before I said the word, but Tortorella actually used it. He couldn't trust any of the other guys. It was Ersson or nothing, because by the end of the year, it's I can't throw Peterson, I can't throw Sandstrom, and sort of I can't really throw Fedotov because it's not changing anything. I just gotta run out Ersson until the wheels fall off. And
By the way, underrated connection that I'm looking forward to seeing blossom over the course of the season is how Michkov plays with Jamie Drysdale, because they are both very creative puck movers, and I could see them doing some silly things.
It's gotta be your top power play unit. Starts with those two.
Correct.
I don't figure out the rest of it for yourself. I feel like I kind of can. Like, to me, the rest of your top power play unit is probably
Konechny.
Couturier, maybe not actually. It was definitely
taking the draw.
Well, yeah, I know. Well, then
even if it's Couturier and a quick swap.
Well, you could go there, or do you go Frost? Taking the draw.
If Frost and Michkov end up as everyday line mates, I think it makes a lot of sense just to keep the consistency smooth.
And I like what you're saying then in that sense, because then like what you're saying is that if he's playing with Couturier, Konechny, then put the three of them out there. I would add Owen Tippett as the fourth forward and Drysdale as the defenseman. And let's put it this way. Here was an interesting tidbit. Do you know who they said is going to be the defenseman, or seems likely to be the defenseman on the second unit?
Is it not Sanheim?
It's not.
Okay.
Sounds like it's going to be Zamula.
Very interesting. And he's always that makes a lot of sense. Okay.
And then you lump in the other guys you were talking about, the Frost, probably at this point, at least at the beginning, it's going to probably be Luchanko, possibly. Well, who knows though? They like Luchanko. They like Luchanko killing penalties, though, is really what it is. So
I think you can situationally give the kid a couple of minutes on it. I don't necessarily think he has a regular spot on that unit right away.
Fair. And then like the obvious are Frost, and Frost should be on it. Farabee should be on one. Brink should be on one, which is why I think you consider Luchanko a little bit. But ultimately, at some point in time, you're going to leave somebody out. Forster's got to be on a power play unit somewhere because he's got a shot. Like you've got to have a guy with a legit shot be on it.
Man, isn't it a good thing to just have two?
I was going to say, you're going to say, isn't it nice to have options?
Okay, so regardless, I have a fourth Metro team making it in the Philadelphia Flyers. You do not. Okay. Both of your Eastern Conference wildcard spots are going to come from the Atlantic. Let's move over to the Atlantic, home of the defending Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers. Who do you have winning this division where, quite frankly, who wins the division never really seems to matter?
I'm going to just repeat you here. So it's the defending Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers.
Okay. So I think it is finally the year that the Tampa Bay Lightning have fallen. I think they're still going to make the playoffs. Spoiler alert, they will make this list for me. I don't think they're going to be this dominant team like they've been. And they've been taking regular seasons off since they won their cups anyway.
I agree with you, by the way. I agree with you on this, by the way. I don't have them high either, so we'll get there.
I think the winner of this division is going to be the Toronto Maple Leafs. I think they're the best regular season team here. I think the Florida Panthers have played a ton of hockey and are probably going to come out to a bit of a slow start. If you've watched Face Off inside the NHL, I know you and I talked about it before and you haven't gotten there yet, but if you're listening at home, it's worth a watch. It's on Amazon Prime. It's a 6-part doc. It just came out on Friday. Incredible look inside the NHL, behind the scenes look at the playoffs.
Admittedly, I don't watch I don't tend to watch Prime things too much. I did catch the clip of McDavid in the locker room during the Stanley Cup final, and listen, if you don't want to.
If you're watching at home, find the Amazon YouTube channel, watch it on Twitter because the one on Twitter is censored. Oh, McDavid just coming unglued.
Yes,
it's so good.
So if you have Toronto winning the division, is Florida your number 2?
Correct. Yeah, and that's
Okay.
again,
And I have
they are
Toronto and I have Toronto as my number 2. So I'm just
totally, and
interchanging here.
they
It's
may be the best team in the division, but like I said, after 2 long postseason runs, and eventually, and partying for basically the entire month of June, they have completely earned a little bit of a hangover. I think there will be a little bit of a hangover, and I think the Florida Panthers, will turn it on in the second half of the season like we see good teams do.
yeah, I mean, like what I wonder about for Toronto more is because first of all, goaltending is still a little bit of a question for me because I think like now it's probably Joseph Wall's net and just wondering how that works for the whole year. I do think he's a good goaltender. I just wonder, usually we always end up having that discussion sometime or another. Defensively, what do they have kind of too? Like they're going to have some, again, this happens a lot with Toronto. They're going to have some wild games at times because of that. Like, because they got plenty of offense. We know that, but it's like they're going to have some pretty wild like 5-4 games. And I'm interested too to see kind of what happens when like we're talking about the sports town or the hockey town anyway of Toronto here where they lost 2 preseason games and somebody asked Craig Berube, is it panic time yet or something, right? Like
Yeah.
have fun, Chief, like
See, but I
like
think
I
Craig's
like
gonna
for
be
what it's worth, I
okay
think
because
it's
it's not
ridiculous.
gonna bother him.
Well, no, I don't think it is either. I think it's ridiculous that he even got asked, but it's like have fun dealing with that every time you lose a game.
But he's not gonna deal with it. He's gonna it's gonna brush off his shoulder as easily as humanly
But
possible.
sure,
I don't think it's going to affect him in the
he's going to
slightest.
step forward with the John Tortorella approach of I don't read any of the stuff that you guys write anyway, which
I do what I do in the room, and what
you
you
know,
guys talk about does not matter. Oh.
yeah,
Okay, so who do you have as your third team in the Atlantic? Because I think this is where it starts to get fun.
okay. I have the Boston Bruins.
Okay. I also have the Boston Bruins, but I'll be honest with you. When I woke up this morning, when my eyes opened this morning, I would not have had the Boston Bruins there. So, as we are recording this on Sunday evening, Jeremy Swayman just signed his
Yes.
contract extension with the Boston Bruins this morning. He is going to make a whole lot of money in Boston over the next, most of a decade. 66 million reasons to play. Um, he wi- Without that signing, and until yesterday, it looked ugly. It looked real bad. It looked William Nylander in Toronto bad. Um,
Here's what I'll tell you about this situation.
yeah,
You love to play the percentage game with me. If you would have asked me as recently as and because we didn't really talk about it much, like it's
sure.
not a topic we need to. If you would have asked me last week, what's the percentage that he's on the team, ready to like, or at least
Oh, it would have been under 50 for sure.
no, like that this is handled beforehand, like what's the percentage that it's not a non-issue?
Under 50% for sure on that, right? Like,
No. I would have told you it's going to get resolved in time.
okay. Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay. Interesting.
because
Fair
I
enough.
because in my mind, you don't make the trade that they made in the offseason with involving Allmark without
Yeah, but
doing.
if I had asked you after it got out as public and nasty as it did, then what would you have said?
I would say it doesn't look good, but I still
Right,
think that there was
because
whatever. Like I'm going to
you don't
no,
have that very
I'm
often.
going to tell you right now that I can gauge that stuff from I got a really good friend who's a Boston fan
Okay.
who felt like this was going to be resolved way sooner, and then once it got public a little bit, you could sense that it was starting to become a concern a little bit and things
Oh,
like that.
yeah.
And everybody else in this group chat that I have with a few friends from college that includes this Boston fan friend of mine was sitting here saying, "Oh, he got his bag, and he's got it." Like someone made the same joke, but not the 66 million reasons, but said 8.25 million reasons. Like all the same. You get the joke. And
Right.
and the response was, "Glad that's done with." Was starting to get a little nervous
Oh, absolutely.
in fairness, it's Sunday morning. Their season starts on Tuesday,
Yep.
so.
They have like 36 hours to get a starting goaltender.
And you know what's going to happen though? So Corpusalo will still probably start the first game because
Mm,
he's going to have to
just for
practice.
preparation. Yeah.
And Swayman will start when they play next on Thursday, I guess it is, and it'll
Something
be
like that.
fine.
Yep.
It will be fine.
Oh god, it is hilarious though that Boston gets to be the team to watch Florida put the banner up. Anyway, so back to our playoff predictions here.
So
We
we're
both
into
have
wild card. Well, so you already
I
spoiled it.
have one spot left.
No, you
You
kind
have
of
two.
you already hinted at it though. I think you already kind of gave it away because you said the Flyers are getting one, and you said Tampa's the other, right? Because you said you had Tampa in.
So I have reevaluated that.
Okay, you're changing
To
on the
be honest,
fly.
to be honest with you, I forgot about the Boston Bruins here in that third slot, and I was like, "Oh, yeah, you're right. They are going to be there,"
Yeah.
because I had already mentally counted them out because of the whole Jeremy Swayman thing. I really, honestly,
Are you
no.
taking
So
out the Tampa Bay Lightning for somebody
I
else?
do not think the Tampa Bay Lightning will make the playoffs this year.
Wow. And who is
No,
coming in?
Jake Gensel sucks. What do you mean? Wow.
That's
Um,
wow. I'm talking about everybody else on that roster. You're keeping Nikita
um,
Kucherov out of the playoffs.
I'm gonna hit you with a good one here.
Sure. I
This,
want to see if
this
it's
might this might be a little bit of a hot take.
I want to see if you match up because I've got a second team from.
I think they have stacked their goaltending just high enough to creep into the playoffs.
Oh, I think I know who it's going to
Steve
be.
Yzerman's going to finally sneak in.
Oh, it is who I thought, or not who I thought you were going to say, but it is what I was thinking.
I think
Okay.
the Detroit Red Wings will sneak in with the second wild card spot. Did you think I was going to say Ottawa? It's definitely not
Yes,
Ottawa.
I did.
Definitely not Ottawa. No shot.
Wait. Hold on a minute. I'm trying to think if there's anybody else from that division that was making me reconsider where you were going
It's
with it.
not
Well,
Buffalo.
it
It's
wasn't going to be.
not
No, I didn't think it was
Montreal.
Buffalo. So I know maybe I did think it was Ottawa. I thought, well, because you said goaltending, and I
No,
wanted
it might have. No, of course it was. It was probably them because they got Allmark. But like,
right. I thought
I
that's where
just
you were going
don't.
with it.
I don't see enough talent in that Ottawa Senators core. Like I think Brady Tkachuk is a really, really, really good player, but I don't think there's enough talent in the guys that they have invested in
Interesting.
to push it over the line. Like I like some of their defensemen, but I think Shabbat's a 3. I think Brandstrom is a 5. I think these guys aren't as good
And
as
after
they're
moving,
being paid.
you're talking also after moving as many different guys as they've had to,
Yeah, it's been such a rough.
sure, if you've still got Chikrin, then we might have a different conversation, but it's like you don't, and
Yeah.
yeah, I got you.
DeBrincat wouldn't stay, and like there's just all sorts of
Yeah, I
nastiness
get you.
there.
So there you go. So, and my two remaining teams are Tampa and Detroit as well.
Yeah, Matt Duchene really did a number on the Senators franchise.
Yeah, I'm keeping Tampa in. You can feel the way you feel about it. I'm keeping Tampa in.
And listen, here's the thing, dude. Like every year, one of their major pieces misses 60 games. And if it's Vasilevsky, you're done. If it's Hedman, you're
Fair enough.
probably done.
Yeah,
If it's
fair enough.
Kucherov, you might be done. If it's Point, you're almost definitely done. Like there's just too many and again, I'm not wishing it upon them. I just one of those things, man. Too many guys get hurt. It's not gonna happen.
No, but in fairness, like I had truly, I really felt like the Bruins thing was going to get resolved. So I always felt like considering, especially like everything else going on, considering I had Swayman in there from day one of the season, even if he doesn't start the first game, I don't care. We know the formula by now with them. It's every other game anyway. It doesn't matter. Well, although maybe they'll change that a little bit with Swayman making $8.25 million a year. But you get my point. Like I always had them in third, so I've always felt Tampa was the 4. But
well, and something else worth mentioning about the Eastern Conference is most of the major moves this summer, talent went west. Like I think the Eastern Conference is just worse than it was last year for the most part.
And well, first of all, that's why I did have 3 teams from the Metro, and also, admittedly, it made the West tough. I was struggling to put together my top 3 for both, and I'm not going to tell you I feel in like I'll go off of this, and I'm going off a gut feeling with some of these picks to a degree because like I'll tell you right now, there's one of them I'm looking at that I'm going, it's my gut feeling, but I don't feel super confident in it looking at it on paper. You know what I mean? Like I kind of have more of a it just is this way kind of thing.
Well, let's start in the Central.
Okay.
Who's your Central winner?
This one I actually feel very confident about my top 3 for this.
Okay. Is number 1 the Dallas Stars?
It is.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I am the same. Is number 2 the Colorado Avalanche?
It is.
Okay. See, you say you're confident in your top three, and I respect that, and I'm gonna let you be confident in your top three, but we might have a different number three here. Why
I,
don't What do you
I don't
got?
I don't know. So we'll see if it's different. My number 3 is the Nashville Predators.
Okay. I think that is a completely respectable pick. They are my fourth team in all honesty, and I do have them making the playoffs. But I do have Minnesota as the third team.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I think I think you have another year of Boldy. You have another year of Gustafson. You cannot underrate the Marc Andre Fleury one last ride effect.
Good
Um,
point there. I'll give you
I think the vibes around that team are gonna be these boys are gonna be emotional. We're gonna be playing hard. We're gonna be playing hard for Flower. I think there's gonna be a lot of emotional nights on the schedule when he plays his last game in a lot of buildings. There's gonna be a lot of money on the board this year in Minnesota, and I think that's a team.
And what's so okay. I all of the points you are making are valid. I totally get that. One of the big reasons I picked Nashville in that third spot is all the offseason moves. I think like you bring in the type of guys they brought in. Like you don't just almost essentially cherry pick from previous Stanley Cup champions like they did
Right.
and not have it make an immediate impact on the rest of your franchise. Like Stamkos for them could be huge. And
Absolutely.
I'm not trying to make it out that this is 28-year-old Steven Stamkos. I get it. But
The culture. The culture.
it and that is a building that is all built around vibes and things like that. Like I just feel really good about that team now. And oh, by the way,
The first time in the playoffs, assuming they make it, Stamkos hits that one timer on the power play.
oh yeah,
That building is going to go absolutely bananas, and he's going to love every second of his life.
I just think it means a lot to add
Tampa who?
To add Stanley Cup pedigree to a Vezina quality goaltender, a Norris quality defenseman, and a still decent skill set forward group that now gets injected with a bunch of Stanley Cup winners. We're talking Stamkos, Marchessault, like
There's a lot of winning
there's a
experience on that roster.
that go on to a group that oh yeah, as long as Philip Forsberg is healthy,
No, I agree. They're my fourth team for sure.
they're
Like I just
I
oh
and I've always liked them to begin with. I get it, but like
yep.
like they're not surpassing my like that I have for Dallas as a team in terms of roster
Okay.
construction, but they had a very notable free agency.
Absolutely. And
And
by the way, I still think Dallas might be the single best built team in the NHL at the moment.
I hear you there.
Like it's hard to
I
argue
don't
against the Florida Panthers
I
just
don't
because
dis-
they just won. But
I
like,
don't I don't disagree, and we might be depending on how far we take this discussion, we'll see if those teams come up again.
do you have a fourth team making the playoffs from the Central Division?
I do, and
Okay.
so now I wrote everything in order. So I did the 3 from one, 3 from another, and then 2 wild cards. So this is they are the team I have as the fourth team is my last in the playoffs. This
Let me guess. Let
hold
me
on.
guess.
You want to actually okay?
Before you reveal it, I'll let you do your setup, but
No,
before you reveal it, I want to
I'm not
guess.
going to say it then because it's probably going to give you a better hint. So I'm not going
Okay.
to say what I was going to
So
say. So go ahead, tell me
it-
who my
it's
fourth team is.
it's definitely not Minnesota because you would have just said that because I just said that.
Fair enough. I do have
So
Minnesota missing
I'm
the playoffs.
gonna look at the rest of the division. It's not gonna be Chicago. It's either Winnipeg or St. Louis because I think Utah took steps, but I don't know if they did enough. If you say Utah, I will be very, very surprised.
Okay.
I'm gonna say the Winnipeg Jets.
Nope.
Okay.
I was going to say this, and this is why I didn't want to keep talking when you wanted to guess because
Yeah.
this is probably my biggest, out on a
If we go
limb
Utah,
take-ish pick that I've got. I'm going Utah.
oh my God, Alex Morello in shambles.
I love the youth of that team.
They've done a
That
great job
and
naming Clayton Keller captain.
I was about to say I think
Mm.
they nailed that captaincy decision with Clayton Keller. I think they've got like and to be honest, I think they've got a group that finished the year the way they did in Arizona, knowing what was going on, and
It's
now
gonna
are going
feel
to a new place, not only with a chip on their shoulders of we had to leave this one place, but they showed
They might feel like year one Vegas with more talent.
Well, did you see the crowd for their first home preseason game too? And I'm not saying it was like, because someone put out there was playoff like, and it was like not playoff like, obviously, like it wasn't sold out like that. But
listen,
but it's a preseason game in Utah.
All right. Okay, so you have Utah there.
That's like the one that I'm kind of going out on a limb on. The rest, every other team I'm going to say from here on out, you're going to sit there and say, yeah, I get it.
You want me to hit you with something fun here?
Sure.
I have a fifth team from the Central Division.
Ooh, okay. So you have Dallas, Colorado, Minnesota, Nashville's your fourth, and you have a fifth, and obviously it's not Utah because you think I'm going out on a limb there. So
listen, I think they're going to be in the race, and they're all so tight that I think that's the reason 5 teams get in from the Central, because I think the Pacific is very haves and have-nots. And I think your playoff race is going to be pretty clear there. And one of your big 4 teams is going to, it's hockey. One of your big 4 teams is going to suffer an injury or start like the Oilers started last year and never recover. It happens all the time. Do what the Devils just did. Like every year there's something. So one of the big 4 teams in the Pacific, I think they're due for that. So I think the 5th team from the Central sneaks in. And I think it's St. Louis.
I knew you were going to say that. That is very
St. Louis Blues. And I sometimes you just kind of say things on this show, or at least I do. I don't know why I'm saying it, but I just have the vibe. Jordan Binnington's crazy ass is going to win 35 games this year. I don't know how. I don't know why. I don't know how. I can't explain it. The Blues are just one of those teams that are always better than they should be. And in a year where I think that division might be pretty scrambly, I think they could take some good points off some good teams. I think they're going to beat their bad teams. I think they're going to be right there.
Very interesting. Okay. So are we shifting gears to the Pacific
Division here?
All right. So let's start with division winner then.
Okay. I think this is probably the division where it's the least obvious.
Who wins the division, you mean, or what?
Yeah. Just who wins the division, right? Because I think looking across, there's typically 1 or 2 good teams. You can talk about the Atlantic and, whatever. But this one, I think there's 2 major horses for a lot of people.
I feel like that. And I feel like I picked one of the 2 that you're going to tell me that would be them, because I feel like I definitely have one of those.
I think the 2 major horses, and I assume we both have them in the playoffs, so I don't think it's too much of a spoiler here, but
go ahead.
I think the 2 major horses are the Edmonton Oilers and the Vegas Golden Knights.
Okay. So which one of them do you have at the top?
So for a similar reason to me not picking the Florida Panthers to win the division, I have chosen the Vegas Golden Knights.
Okay.
To win the Pacific Division, because
really?
I think Florida, and this is, again, the Dallas Star or the Edmonton Oilers played a lot of hockey this year. I think they're going to be a good team this year, but I think there might be a little bit of that hangover, and I think they're going to end up there. But Vegas is still just a unit. Like I think they took a step back, but like I think they're still just a unit.
Interesting. So I have Edmonton winning the division.
Okay.
For first and foremost. Now, this is where it gets interesting, because I do have Vegas second.
Okay. I have Edmonton second, so we are again flip-flopped.
But the interesting part is I agree with you. They took a step back, and because of it, that's where I said my gut feeling is put Vegas second, because they just tend to be there anyway. But I'm not overly confident.
Okay.
Like I think that is much closer than I feel. Now you said you had a 5th team, like when we were talking the Central, you had a 5th team, so you have one more team to pick and that's it. I obviously have a 4th involved in this division too, and that's where I go a little have things get a little interesting, because I really don't know how this shakes out. Like I really don't. So, but I'm putting, like, my gut when I wrote it out was put Vegas number 2, because it just feels like that's where they finish.
It feels right. Like Vegas they've come in the league and they've only been in leagues 7 or 8 years, and they have just established excellence.
Like, can I tell you that my doubt on that literally shifted just looking at it like just now? Like when I did this earlier and I wrote out like to pick something, it was like almost like a just almost like a crutch. Like I just, like almost like it was just a natural reflex to write Vegas in the top 3. And then I
I agree.
looked at it later and I'm like, is that really where I
Not
feel
sure
like
about that.
am I sure? But I like I said, I kind of feel like I did it because it's like, where else do you think they would finish? Like it feels like
Right,
they
like
all
where else is the Jack Eichel team gonna finish? Like they're horses. What do you mean they're not gonna finish second in that division?
sure. And like
Right.
listen, process of elimination with the rest of these teams in this division is pretty easy when you think about it. Like, no,
Yeah.
it's not Anaheim. Calgary definitely took a step back. No, it is not San Jose.
No, I think so. Okay.
So go ahead. Tell me number 3, by
You
the way.
Well, you have 2 spots left, and I think you're realistic contenders. You have LA, Seattle, Vancouver fighting for 3 spots.
Correct.
Whereas I have
One spot.
realistically 2 teams fighting for 1 spot because I think Seattle is a chunk behind those teams, right?
That's
I
fair.
think I think they can stay in a race and maybe make a wild card, but I don't think they're getting a divisional spot in this division.
Fair enough.
Um,
So who's number 3?
the Kings and the Canucks are both good teams.
Sure.
And like I alluded to earlier, I think this may come down to something beyond the team's control, an injury, a suspension, something
Fair.
along those lines where you're going to miss a player for a significant chunk of time and that might cost you your playoff race. God, I don't want to do it to Canucks fans, but I think the Kings get in.
Okay.
Quentin Byfield is really good at hockey, and I think he is going to take the kind of step forward this year that gets him in the conversation for the national awards. Like, I don't think he's going to win one this year, but I
Okay.
think he's going to start to generate that sort of conversation as a superstar in this game.
Okay.
And they're scary because Anze Kopitar is still pretty good underratedly. And like, I know Drew Doughty's going to miss some time, and that
Yep.
might be the injury that cost them the season, right? And it may be Vancouver because LA just couldn't overcome missing Doughty for the first half.
Fair.
But if he comes back and they're anywhere near a playoff race, I think LA is really good.
Okay, so I'm gonna have a way to build up to the last one, but I'll spare the drama on the first one. I have LA third as well
Okay. Okay.
because I just, and that's why I said like it's almost like just a natural reaction at this point to go Vegas, Edmonton, LA. Just put them in order, top 3 in the Pacific.
Yeah.
It typically feels that way. So I'm leaving you dangling on 2 teams left for one.
Seattle and theoretically Vancouver, unless there's somebody else involved here.
No, there's not because I already
Okay.
mentioned the other 3 as no. Like,
Ways. Yeah.
well, Calgary took a step back anyway, so no. Anaheim's not there. San Jose's not there. Anaheim and San Jose are going to be interesting teams to watch because there's a lot of fresh blood on both of those rosters. But no, and I'm not going to make this seem like it's anything out of the ordinary. Like, this is not going out on a limb to me at all. I have Vancouver as the 4th team.
Okay. Yeah, and I think that makes a lot of sense. Like I mentioned, I think Seattle is a step behind.
Well, and
Just
when it came down to it too, I just couldn't pick against, like, Quinn Hughes had such a good year last year,
I
and
couldn't pick Dave Hextall.
no, well,
Oh wait, he's not even there anymore.
right.
They
No,
ran the
it
players
was
ran him out of town
no,
allegedly.
it was I can't pick, like, it's the way Quinn Hughes played, Brock Besser, Elias Pettersson, and like there's just too much talent on that Vancouver team, even with some questions about Demko in goal, but assuming they get him back reasonably soon.
Hopefully.
But then again, they made some noise in a playoff series that looked like they had no business being in, with a goalie that most people had never heard of before.
Absolutely. They dragged that to 7 with their 3rd goalie. Like, that's
Right.
impressive.
So good for them. They've got a lot of talent, I think, and I think we can all agree we like the coaching situation there too. Like, it seems like there's a lot to build on. I'm riding that. I'm thinking that's my, and that's why I said for me, really, like, I really feel like top 7 wise in both conferences, I wasn't going out on a limb for anything. It just is like, hate to break it to you, but if you aren't typically in the playoffs, good luck breaking through.
Not making it this year, right?
like probably, I mean, like the one team that I did that to, because I really think that last year was just one of these, anomalies for them is Jersey. Like look, I had them in
And
the
that's even
Stanley.
more so getting back because I think they
What?
made the playoffs 2 or 3 years prior to
Well,
that, right? Like,
I had them going to the Stanley Cup final last year and got burned by it pretty badly. I'm like, I think at the very least, I feel like I can bump them back into you're going to be in the playoffs. I don't have you winning the whole thing or anything like that this time, but I do have you as a playoff team. And I have the same 4 teams that we talk about every year out of the Atlantic out of it. And I am throwing an additional one in because, man, I thought they got so close last year. Detroit got so close and had magic behind them at the end in such a way that it was like, I can't believe that they're still hanging around. And I think, and they got like, that's a young team that's gonna keep getting better. Like, I just feel strongly about that. And then, like I said, I like my real go out on a limb, and the other side is Utah. I really think
I love that path. I really do. I obviously didn't pick it, but I think it's so much fun, and I am so incredibly here for it. I think it's
I agree with
so good for the game.
I agree with exactly where you went with it. There is like this little bit of a first year Vegas feel with that. Like,
Chip on the shoulder. That, yep,
they're going to be fun. They're definitely going to be a fun team. I can tell you.
I
that.
agree. Oh, and the vibes are going to be incredibly high.
Well, everybody's not going to be able to wait to see what hockey looks like out there too.
I agree. I agree. Also, have you seen the concession prices?
Yes, I have.
Extraordinarily fan-friendly concession pricing is great for the game.
So the Utah Hockey Club, the Atlanta Falcons, take notes every other league in North America.
Absolutely.
Take notes.
It is fan-friendly, and they listen. Is it the highest quality stuff? Probably not, but it's not dollar popcorn, brother. Don't charge $9 for a box that costs you 45 cents, please. But either way, we love to see some affordable concession pricing in our arenas. Hopefully that expands throughout the rest of the league. One more little league prediction here. We're not going to do awards and stuff like that because, quite frankly,
no, we normally don't.
Connor McDavid and Austin Matthews and Connor Hellebuck. Okay, you're welcome.
And Matvei Michkov.
Okay, you're welcome.
And Matvei Michkov.
Well, right, we did talk about that one. I would like a Stanley Cup prediction from you. I want both teams and a winner.
Perfect. That's exactly what I had. Was final
I want
first.
Both teams and a winner.
I don't think this is going too far out on a limb. I think you're.
Okay.
I told you we might revisit this at some point. I have from the Eastern Conference. I have the Florida Panthers again, and from the Western Conference, I have the Dallas Stars.
Okay, sounds familiar.
Yeah, that's what you picked last year, right?
And that is what I picked last year. And who do you have in that series?
I would take Dallas this time.
Okay.
I know I went for it last year with them. I think that this is it's the team on paper that I like the most in the league, and they were knocking on the door last year. They had Edmonton down 2-1 in the conference final and did not put it away. And I think every year
face off inside the NHL again, just Amazon Prime. Holy.
I hear you. And
they zoom in on that, and it's incredible. It's really.
And I just keep thinking these learning experiences. You lose in a game 7 in the first round, so the next year you go a little further. You lose to Vegas the year they win the cup. The next year you go a little further. Now you lose directly in the conference final. They keep taking steps, and I think that, like, again, how much I like that they've got the goalie, they've got the number 1 defenseman. They've really got they've got 2 defensemen at least that I get excited over, because I'm throwing Harley into that too at this point. Like, Heiskanen's obviously been the guy for so long, but I'm throwing Harley into that mix too. And that's not even talking supporting cast. And then the forward group keeps getting better with still getting something out of the same guys that have been there forever with Seguin and Ben, but getting, Robertson, Rope Hintz. And
Tim Nill has absolutely convinced him in Mr. Class.
Robertson, Rope Hintz, Wyatt Johnston. Now you got Stankoven for the whole year. You're going to have such a fun experience. Like, watching that team has got to be a fun experience. They've got such a talented group. There you go.
It's the only time in my life I'm ever going to wish I was a fan of a Dallas team. So
Fair
the
enough.
Dallas Stars, I also have the Dallas Stars coming out of the West.
Okay.
As far as the East goes, I mentioned that I think the some of the talent left the East. I think the East may get a little bit more top heavy this year.
Oh, I can't wait to hear this pick. Why do I have a feeling I know what you're going to say?
And you know who that favors, right?
Go
I don't
ahead.
feel good about it. I don't feel good about it.
Oh, it's not who I thought you were going to say then. Okay, go
Oh
ahead.
no.
I
I
know who you're
don't
going to say
no,
now.
no, no, it's not Toronto. Stop it. Stop it. It's not Toronto.
I thought you were going to cause
Toronto
chaos.
loses in the first round. Come on.
To
6 or
who?
7.
You had him
Does it
winning
matter?
you had him winning the division. They're losing to Detroit, aren't they?
Did they lose to Montreal in the bubble?
Yeah, I hear you. I'm
Okay.
saying.
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. They didn't lose to Montreal in the bubble. They lost to Montreal in the Canada
Oh,
year.
that's
They
right. The
lost to
Canada series.
Columbus in the bubble.
Sure. Anyway.
Anyway, no, they're not winning in the first round.
Okay.
Um, no. This is
Well,
much less fun.
you're
This
not going to
team
say
does
the other,
this
the
team
other,
does also have blue and white, but they have red also as
yeah, I
well.
was going to say you're not going to say the other
Unfortunately,
team
I
in the
have the New
Metro that
York
you want.
Rangers
Yeah.
making the Stanley Cup
Yeah, you're
Finals.
not going to say the team in the Metro you want to say.
Oh no, I'm going to say a team in the Metro, not the team I want to say. No. The New York Rangers are going to make the Stanley Cup Final. I do think the Dallas Stars will win. I
Okay.
think they are a more playoff built team. They are. I think Ottinger is one of the few goalies in the league who can stand toe to toe with Shesterkin over the span of a series. I think they are one of the few rosters that has the depth and the size and the hunger to play against the New York Rangers.
Sure.
Um, Frankly, I see a world where the Rangers win because their path to the cup was so much easier. Quite frankly, I expect them to walk through the first round like they did this year, and probably the second round too, because even Carolina probably took a bit of a step back.
Sure.
Um, they could they could come into the Eastern Conference Finals really, really healthy, and that's very scary.
So we did not go this far back with it, and I'm not mentioning I don't even
Right.
really have another team in mind for who Dallas beats in the West final. The immediate thought I had for the East final though was I'm picking Florida, and it would probably be Florida over the Rangers. And it really, I don't know if they can afford for it to even be like that, honestly. Like this feels like you have them going and then losing, they might have to win, or that team's going to go through big changes.
Oh, I would love that as a Flyers fan.
I like
To watch that front office implode as the Flyers are finally starting to get good.
well,
Oh
and the
yeah,
reason
let's go.
well, and the reason why I feel that way is because I don't have them making it, and Florida makes it again. And if you end up in the same spot like you've been, where we got to the conference finals, but not
Well, and I ran my little playoff bracket in my head, my little NHL sim through the rounds of the playoffs in my head to try to figure out my prediction here. And
right,
I also had them, the Rangers and the Panthers in the Eastern Conference Final. At some point, Florida has to run out of gas. And like I mentioned, they've just played so much hockey. If the Rangers tear through the first 2 rounds like paper mache and you come in fresh to play a Panthers team that has played 190 hockey games over the last 2 years,
right. Well,
man, it's ugh.
Well, like again, looking at my list of teams, the Rangers would probably get Detroit in the first round because
Yeah,
it,
and the
it
Rangers win in 3.
even though that's impossible, I get it.
Yo, you're
But
right, 2.5.
okay, well, either way,
We mercy
um,
rule.
Florida's gonna have I feel confident about Florida winning that division, but it's going to be a tough go because there are so many better teams in that division. It
Agree.
feels like, and sure, do I
And it's
see
going
them
to be a
getting?
tougher run through the divisional rounds of the playoffs.
Yeah, and sure, do I see them getting past Tampa and whomever else? Probably based on your prediction, getting past Boston, I guess.
Well, whoever it is going to take their pound of flesh in that division. Like
Right.
that's just how the division that's how
Actually,
that division works.
actually, wait a minute. I'm wrong about that. That's not true at all. Because the way you had it stacked up, they would play Boston in the first round and I guess still win.
Probably, yeah.
And then Toronto would get knocked out
Well,
by
it depends
Tampa,
on
I guess.
wild card because I have the Flyers and
Right. Now,
the
what it sounds like you have is the Rangers playing the Flyers and then Toronto playing Detroit and losing. So that would mean
that would
Florida
be
would play.
so funny. Oh, how funny would it be if the Red Wings win a first round before the Leafs? Oh my God. Sorry. And I know they won against Tampa, but you know what I mean.
Is that supposed to be?
Um,
Is that how the Iser plan goes?
oh, it'd be really funny.
Anyway,
Okay. So I think that is a good place to put a pin in our 24-25 NHL season preview.
it is.
Um, I think it's going to be a really fun season. We will be back next week, and every week as we are now into our weekly release schedule for the regular season. We will be back pretty much every week until schedules start getting in the way. We'll keep you updated. Follow us on social media for some of that as well at YWT Podcast. Kevin is at Kevin_Durso. Find us everywhere you find your podcasts, including sportstalkphilly.com. Um, Kevin, by the time we speak next, we'll have two
Yes.
actual NHL regular season Flyers games to talk about. Are you excited?
Sure. You know why? Because we're gonna have two legitimate NHL regular season games, presumably for both Matvei Michkov and Jett Luchanko to talk about, and I think that that's already worth tuning in for, right? Like that's your draw to begin with. So can't wait to see what
Well,
happens. Maybe we will have a reason to or I'll have a reason anyway to put up as early as Friday night. Watch Matvei Mishkov's first NHL goal legitimately.
and review the graphics.
What's that? No. There's no graphics
Oh,
anymore.
we're not doing graphics this year.
No,
Okay.
no, no, because there's not a
Uh,
dedicated in-game account anymore and stuff. So
by our next show, okay, we're gonna record next Sunday. By our next show, Mishkov over under 2.5 points.
ooh, 2.5 is a little risky on my for me. I'll say I'm taking the under, but I will give him 2. I'm gonna have him on point per game pace in the first 2 games.
I'm taking the over. Go Flyers. We'll be back next week. We'll see you.